if we could get rid of defecation in general, I would be all for it. I would give up almost anything. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are Irenicast, a group of folks leaning into a progressive Christian imagination. I'm Jeff.
I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
And this is Rajeev.
On the first and third Tuesday of every month,
we provoke conversation for shifting perspectives
on theology and culture.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, we are back. And this week, this episode we are returning to, we are going to be talking about deconstruction and reconstruction. Words that have been, I don't know, I guess we'll get into it, but probably a little overplayed.
I mean, I think our attempt is to get beyond the binary of deconstruction, reconstruction.
Right. My hope is that you're always deconstructing, that we are always asking the good and hard questions of our faith and of who we are as people, for sure.
Right. So we are going to spend the next 6 episodes on this idea of beyond the binary of deconstruction and reconstruction. I think a lot of the times the language is this finality to it, as if we're not always doing this in some way, shape, or form throughout our entire existence with faith, with all kinds of different things. We want to kind of create a resource with these next few episodes. Hopefully we're bringing up some new things. Hopefully we're reminding you of some old things. And we figured for this particular conversation, we're calling it Waking Up. We're going to start with the beginning, those moments where, you know, what caused us to reevaluate where we are in our faith and in our life and our worldview and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to take some time and we're going to share our journeys, and we're hopefully that those of you that are listening, some of them interact. For those of you that have been listening for a long time, you might remember some of these stories and some of these things that we're going to be talking about. But we think this is just a great place to start. And we're going to end the conversation with a short excerpt of an interview that Bonnie conducted with Debbie Glander that I think is super relevant, especially to this moment in deconstruction of waking up. Yeah, so we're going to kind of do it a little differently. You're going to hear from us. You're going to hear from someone else. And then we got a fun segment for us for everyone. I think it's new to the show. It's called This or That. And basically we are going to play the role of Thanos, and we are going to get rid of 50% of something. We're going to pick between two things and rid the world of it once and for all. That's what's on the docket for today. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with that first question. What was our waking up moment or moments when it came to entering into the realm of spiritual deconstruction?
There's no singular moment for me, but I can trace some stuff back. And it depends on what we're talking about. Is it theology? Is it recognizing I'm really done with this church, this denomination? So I'll start there because I think that was probably the earliest for me. Growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist church, I grew up in a fairly liberal church in that world. Early on, like junior high, women's ordination was a thing. I mean, I can't even believe it's a thing. Was a thing then, and it continues to be a thing. Just feeling like, yeah, women should be ordained. It makes no sense. But part of that belief was we could reform the church from within. And then realizing, no, this isn't going to work. These folks are doubling down and still don't ordain women. So there's that one thread. But I didn't leave Christianity. I was just like, well, there's got to be other Christian churches. And then there was a whole other series of things where the theology itself began to crumble. But it's a series of waking up moments along a number of different threads. So like lots of alarms going off. And actually, most of them, luckily, I mean, Bonnie and I have been in a relationship since our late teens. So quite often she was the first person that I would discuss that with.
I think for me, growing up, being born into a tradition that's like super high control, it's hard to find one's voice when, like, right from the very beginning, you're told that you can't trust your voice. So waking up, in order to even wake up, I think there has to be almost an external force that sort of pierces through somehow and catches you and helps to awaken that voice within you that says, this isn't okay. The way people were being manipulated, for example, into accepting Jesus, like those are things that never felt okay to me. It took an outside reading books or paying attention to the broader culture to see that what was happening on the inside wasn't okay. But I had a very insular world. I mean, I wasn't homeschooled, but I was taught within the Seventh-day Adventist school system. So I had no social experiences outside of other people who believed just like we did. So it was challenging. And I imagine there are maybe some other listeners out there who have had a similar experience of being in a very insular community and needing the outside to sort of somehow penetrate that insular community in order to experience those alarm bells.
I think for me, it was a choice of whether I choose myself and live or die. It was sort of, for me, some of you have heard in previous episodes me talk about my own coming out experience. The bells for me started when I began to realize that I had to either trust what was happening inside of myself and believe what was happening in me, or take on the narrative of the churches around me that were saying that I was bad and broken, that God could heal me. I mean, I had been on all these crazy evangelical trips and seen crazy things happen. And if God could do those things but still chose not to fix me, what did that mean? It meant that there was nothing wrong with me. I mean, there was a set of things, right? That sort of internal processing and revelation that there's nothing bad about me being a gay man. There's nothing broken in me, but also just seeing sort of the behind the scenes of how these high control environments were leading worship. They knew exactly when to play the music. They knew exactly when to take the offering. Beginning to see the manipulation of people's heartstrings and emotions, and realizing that this was meant to control us. This was meant to do something to us. And a culmination of things, right? Other conversations, being able to watch movies like Saved. You know, when you get to college, you can watch whatever you want. Those are the things I think that started for me. But it started with that internal noticing and having to choose myself over the community.
You know, and your point about life and death, Casey, is legit. What you're talking about is not hyperbole. There is the physical reality of things getting to life or death crossroads. And I also think there's sort of this non-physical life and death moments that people face where, you know, I remember and encounter from time to time where they're walking dead. It's like, who is this person? This is a shell of flesh and bone, but where is this person? Like they don't even exist in this plane. And that's so heartbreaking. So their heart's beating, you know, their lungs are breathing, but they're not alive.
They have no self. I mean,
that's so sad.
That's sort of the thing that, you know, I think about often is that a lot of us, when we came to the evangelical world or whatever high control environments as we're calling them, we were teenagers. And much of the things that they were saying from pulpits to teenagers are the very things that we were believing about ourselves, right? As we are going through puberty, as we are forming our identity, we already feel uncomfortable in our own skin. We already feel bad about ourselves as we are transitioning. To hear from an adult's mouth, "You are bad and broken. There is nothing good in you." We're like, hell yeah, we believe that. That's right in line with where we are. And so we start as young people in a tradition and in a culture that tells us that we are bad and broken, and we believe it until we don't, until we wake up. But these formative years play such a huge part in who we are. And for many of us, we were involved in situations where the only messages we were hearing affirmed the things that were being said in us to ourselves. And I think that that's an important thing to notice. And that's a lifelong, you know, as we talk about deconstruction, I think for many of us, undoing some of those tapes is a lifelong process because that's all we ever heard. And it was reinforced by the adults around us.
Yeah. And I mean, for some people, you can back up even further. You know, you're a 2 or 3-year-old hearing those messages. Sure. Yeah. And where your ego is supposed to start to develop, where you're supposed to realize that you're separate from the others around you and that you get to have your own self and engage in the world as your own self, not to or to be told that your own self is bad and broken, as you're saying, Casey, but then also to constantly have that self sort of formed in a likeness that others have chosen for you. And that's really challenging, to one's own self-development, like you're talking about. So it's not just internalizing those messages of like how bad and awful you are and how much you depend on God for survival and on this community for survival, but then also to never be able to hear your own voice, your own inner voice as a 2 and 3-year-old when that begins to form, because it's disciplined out of you. Yes. Which is what that high control religious environment is. It's like human formation within these environments is really awful. And when one wakes up to that, these are the people who have fed you, who've clothed you, who've made sure you've had shelter. These are the people who have told you stories and you've sat on their laps and they've given you hugs. And like, where do you go? Like, who are the mentors that are going to help lead one out? And so waking up can be the loneliest, most desperate, most death-like kind of experience ever. And it's this juxtaposition of like knowing that in order to preserve your life, you must wake up and you must find your way out, and also feeling incredibly crushed because the only life you know is the life within this world and within these people. Yeah, I keep thinking of the Matrix. It's a lot like the Matrix, taking the pill.
Yeah, here's a little plug for Intersections, right? That's how we met Jeff. Jeff came and did an episode of Irenicast with us up here. Intersections was something that Bonnie, Rajeev, and I and Alan started as a way to have conversations about leaving these high control environments. We heard so many people say it wasn't the theology change that impacted me. It wasn't my deciding to leave a church. It was the community who abandoned me. It was the people who I did sit on their lap, who did teach me Sunday school, who did feed me when I was sick or visited me in the hospital, who the moment I made this shift in my life left me high and dry. That was the most common pain that I heard people express. I lost my community. They had very little care for their transition in theology, very little. I mean, it was a big shift, but it wasn't the thing that stung the most, right?
I think that with that, I think we're honing in on one of these key aspects. When I changed methods on how I cook my eggs in the morning, I didn't have wake up moments. I didn't have like this major epiphany. It was just something like, I'll try that, because there was no consequence, right? Like I wasn't going to blow up the house. Well, maybe I was, but that wasn't in the forefront of my mind. But because we're surrounded in these high control environments, whether it's our religious upbringing or even just our family dynamics, or perhaps a job that we've been a part of, when there's so much weight put on because of that control, it's why we have this word deconstruction, and it becomes this thing that is prevalent in this space, especially for those of us that are coming from evangelical backgrounds, because it is pointing to a system that is hyper controlling. And from my experience, there were the Mr. Burns types that were like, it was all calculated and, they were just like to their core controlling people. But then there was all kinds of people who were, including myself, who were perpetuating these things with a very earnest heart, hoping, and because that's all they taught was, this is how you help people change. This is how you help people. And I think that it's recognizing those waking up moments and recognizing whether the environment that you're in allows you to move to the next step of those waking up moments. In my experience, there was a lot of, spiritual stuff coming from a Pentecostal background. So we were encouraged to discern the spirit, was the term that was used a lot. That if you were feeling like, this is kind of weird, you were encouraged to follow that through and explore it. So you had these, it was so compartmentalized. But then if you're like, well, I don't know about this in the Bible. No, stop right there. Like there were other things that where you were cut in your track. And I think the thing that benefited me in my waking up moments is that I was already a pretty private person in general, so I didn't share everything with everyone. So I just explored those on my own and didn't even tell people I had those doubts. So I was kind of able to work through those things. And, going to a university that was outside of my denominational sphere also helped in the long run, giving me new perspectives. But I think it really does seem to come down to that environment, because we deconstruct all the time. But if the environment is controlling, then it becomes a thing and a burden, and we lose relationship and life as a result.
Yeah, thinking about this discussion, I was recounting moments that were really illustrative of the fact that I was in a high control environment. And a number of them basically, a theme with variations is like hanging out with my friends, talking about doing something that we all knew we weren't supposed to do. Right? We were all on the same page, and we're like, well, let's go ahead and do it because we're curious and interested in it. And then let's not tell anybody because we know it's wrong. And then feeling really guilty for even thinking that way. And so for in my mind, those alarm bells at that time weren't alarm bells like, hey, your environment is not okay. It was, hey, the devil is starting to tempt you and move you into territory you're not supposed to go in. And in my case, these were simple things like, with Seventh-day Adventism, Friday sundown to Saturday sundown is like dogmatic. And these are things like saying we're going to youth group on Friday night, but then going to a movie instead. So, these aren't dangerous, life-threatening, or even theological problems, but that's the kind of stuff we were like freaking out about.
They were right, Rajeev. All those movies, and now look at you. You're a dirty liberal socialist, and you've...
And it was so deep in me, there were times that I didn't want to bail on my friends because I, loved being around them. I would stay in the parking lot. Like, we'd go to the movies, I would stay in the parking lot, hang out, read the Bible in my car till they got out of the movie.
That is fantastic. I mean, it's not, but...
But illustrates for sure the control.
Yeah, exactly.
And the shame. You don't have control over somebody's spirit without shame. And I think that's the master alarm bell, perhaps, is waking up to the fact that you have been shamed about things that are just you. They're just parts of who you are. In hearing your story, Rajeev, that's what it made me think of. Is just like when I realized that I had been shamed to such a degree that my choice was to be a shell of a person. That was my choice. Then I felt like, okay, regardless of what is behind me in my wake, relationships, all of it, Jesus, whatever I have to leave behind, it's worth it. It's worth stepping out, because I will not be a shell of a person, and I will not let shame be what fills me in the shell. That was the biggest alarm bell, was when I came to that, but it took a while to get there.
Bonnie, that is so beautiful. I mean, that is a sermon in itself, right? I really loved hearing that. I just want to respond to that by saying, as I said earlier, like, I think for so many of us, what we sacrifice in being in high control environments is a self. We literally have no self. When you say a shell of a person, I think what you're speaking to is that you respond with platitudes and the Bible. There's a response for everything. You do not have an opinion that is yours. You do not have a thought that is yours. Because the fear is that the moment you have those thoughts, the devil is seeping in, or you're being tempted to believe something different. I'm continuing to think about Jesus's invitation, to come and die, right? Come and die. And I think what needs to die first in us is our certainty about any of these things. And what we are being invited into in being in these high control environments is giving over our freedom, giving over our thoughts, giving over ourself to someone else, and trusting that they have our best interest. And that is not true.
Right. And that's the rhetoric, right? Is that you don't have a self. You don't have self-esteem. You have Christ-esteem. The whole idea of original sin, the metaphors of you are a vessel, the worship songs that say, I surrender all, not my will, but your will. The human videos and sketches where, God is the puppet master and, you hand back control to God and all that stuff. It's so in there. So any kind of expression of the self is deemed as selfish. And that, for me, that worked because I had a real and still have a real issue with selfishness for a lot of different reasons. And like just this idea of being selfless was appealing for me for a lot of different reasons, probably. But when it mattered, Casey, earlier in this conversation, you talked about kind of a lot of us, our adolescence being probably the most entrenched time in a lot of ways in evangelicalism, at least for me it was, and how much damage that did because I was still, adolescence is a whole search for self and who you are and becoming an adult. And it's a mixed bag for sure.
Yeah, I know we're working on being beyond the binary, but something that keeps coming to mind, hearing Bonnie share what she just shared and thinking about, my own formation, there's this awful, horrendous, sinful teachings and formations around gender and gender roles and types. And to oversimplify it, women are supposed to be submissive to be a woman, and men are supposed to be controlling and in charge. But be benevolent in your control. It's horrendous because it robs everyone of their personhood. It feeds the ego of one and robs the ego and self-worth of another. But even the feeding is about this stuff that's just jacked up.
Right. And in those moments, like we talk about all these wake-up moments. There are definitely moments, whether it's ideas or conversations or events or anything like that. But then it's like, well, now what do I do with these wake up moments? What am I allowed to do? It's probably the first question, because it's interesting. At least for me, my experience was like, what does God want? But if I really look at it, what has the church told me that God wants? The ultimate mediator was not Jesus. It was the church leadership, right? That's who you really had to check with. And that's where it kind of got muddy for, I think, a lot of people, because there was probably little wake up moments that were more acceptable than others. And I think probably all of us based on our own context, we knew which lines we could go up to and which lines we couldn't cross at all, which probably sent a lot of us into, well, at least for me, places of isolation and being secretive and deception, because I wanted that community, but I couldn't let go of these things that I was feeling or thinking.
I think that's the biggest sorrow, is how much risk we put our young people at in creating this sort of environment, because they feel like they cannot tell anyone anything. And so they end up in dangerous situations because there's no one they can talk to, whether that be that they are LGBT and they end up committing suicide, whether it be they are feeling bad about their bodies as young women.
Or they need to choose an abortion.
Or they need to choose an abortion, right. The list is long of things that young people are addiction issues, drug addiction issues, and they feel like there's nowhere they can go. We are setting our young people up to live a double life. We are telling them that the very people who say that they are safe are in fact not safe when it comes to things that actually matter in moments of crisis.
And I think that we do, you wake up, well, everybody's experience is different, but you have these various iterations of wake up moments. And in my experience, like the alarm bell got just like a fire alarm or something. It starts off really kind of small, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you have to do something about it. And you realize the house is on fire and you have to get out to save yourself. Like it almost, for me, that's almost how it had to end up before I had enough courage to leave. But I think that our propensity is to like, okay, so you let it burn behind you and you're out now into this new realm, and maybe you find freedom and you discover yourself and all of these things. But I think it's really important to stop for a minute and, like we've been talking about, reflect on the impact that being in that environment in the first place had on one's soul and one's spirit, and how that sort of lives with us. You know, there's healing. Healing is possible, but there's an imprint that we can use, a woundedness that we can use then to connect with other people, but it's there. Like, we want to leave it all behind, like for real, leave it all behind. And I don't know. I think that's not possible. And maybe that's part of this whole conversation of beyond the binary of deconstruction and reconstruction, is to explore in some ways the imprint, the impact on us through the whole various processes, the spiral process of deconstruction and reconstruction.
Yeah. I mean, denial sometimes is necessary for survival. And survival is a moment-to-moment goal, but it isn't where we all want to end up spending the majority of our lives. We don't want to just be surviving. So, you know, part of the work is to return to the painful parts. Get professional, qualified therapy with experts like Debbie Glander or someone near you. You know, I earnestly pray that you have folks in your corner that can hold that with you. You know, spaces like intersections, like Casey said, those are spaces where that's possible. But yeah, survival is important. So please do that first and foremost. It's not a life.
I would just say that if you think that deconstruction means leaving it all behind and never having to pick any of it up again, you're missing out. The people that I find most spiritually grounded, most profoundly faithful, are the people who have left it, who literally deconstructed, let the house burn, and have said, what now can I make beautiful out of the ashes? Do what you got to do to survive, but know that there's thriving. Know that there's healing possible for you, and get the help you need, and find the community you need, whether that be through intersections or through an EDM group, you know, whatever. If you just need to dance it out, find a space that speaks to transcendence and gives you life and community. Because I think if there's anything we've learned over the last year and a half, it's that we all are in dire need of intimate connection, of relationship, and that we don't really thrive without it.
Right. And I think that hopefully what you're hearing in this initial conversation as we kind of, you know, destroy this binary, is that deconstruction is not remaining an empty shell and just filling it with something else. It's not about the ideas. It's not about the religion. It's not about any of that. It's moving from being an empty shell to a living, breathing, evolving form of life that becomes its own entity and has its own agency. And I think we forget that sometimes, because whether we're conservative or liberal or evangelical or progressive or whatever, we can still be fundamental or fundamentalist in that journey. And I think that we have a lot of, when we talk about deconstruction, we just boil it down to these simple ideas and theologies and all that kind of stuff. And yes, that's part of it. But once we have those theologies, how do we adopt it? Do we still hold it in the same way that we did before? Because if we did, then did we really deconstruct? And we understand that this is a spectrum of, you know, earlier we were talking about, you know, we were using the word survival, and, you know, all of us have had, you know, varying degrees of intensity in terms of how difficult this journey has been in being in high control environments. But I think that the goal is still the same, is becoming a person with agency.
That's really well said, Jeff.
Yeah. So the invitation maybe of this episode is to ask yourself, how did I wake up? What was going on inside of me? What was going on around me? Where's the pain in that? Where did it hurt? And revisit.
And a companion question is, how am I waking up? Because it's perpetual.
And huge gratitude for Debbie, who's going to sort of guide us a little bit into those questions. or who guides us into those questions, and then also teaches us what is available on the other side.
Right. So here's just a little bit of Bonnie's conversation with Debbie Glander that is relevant to what we've been talking about today. And on the other side of that portion of the interview, we'll move on to the rest of the episode.
Yeah, I hear people often say, they develop worlds of connections too on the outside, but the people they're connected to, really, they have no idea where they've come from. So there's a part of them that always sort of remains unseen and left
That's so
behind.
important.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up. I call it kind of, we feel like a fraud.
Yeah.
They have no idea, what we've experienced. And there's a lot of shame around it. I mean, I know for me, I did not want to tell my friends I was that person that was annoyingly knocking at their door every weekend, or that weird kid in school that couldn't celebrate the holidays, or, always being separated from all the activities, or, just how people looked at us, and how I felt in the world because of having no coping tools. People don't have any idea. And even as adults, I'd be in conversation, and a lot of clients have shared this. People will be talking and I'm like, I don't even know what they're talking about, because I was so behind culturally, so behind socially, so behind academically, so behind in all the different, social, like we're going to talk about, social psychological stages, felt very childlike. So I appreciate people have been able to share with you that experience, because I know I could relate to it. And so it helps go, we feel really young in this adult body a lot of times.
It's so much. I mean, even now as we're talking, I think, wow, I've heard this before and I've read about this and I've had this experience, but just being in conversation with you, I'm feeling in my own body things coming up, because the journey from intellectualizing the experience and then actually letting it sink into the body itself and to feel it is, for me anyways, it's been very challenging to make that journey.
It is. And I highly recommend for my clients, I have a practitioner I work with that does trauma sensitive yoga, and I really trust her, and she has amazing training. She also has a religious trauma background. So I will, use different modalities of other people in the community that I feel can hold the client in a way that understands the religious trauma or the cult trauma. It's really important. I love that you're speaking to that, Bonnie, that yes, it's in our body. This is a somatic response we're having to this trauma. And a lot of us didn't even know it was trauma.
Right.
It's not one of those, when you leave, then you're done and you're over.
Right.
There is a long process, and not even being able to really heal until we know the complexity and the comprehensiveness of what happened to us. I mean, that is almost mind blowing for a lot of people, like not even realizing, because it's really the invisible trauma. We don't, it hasn't been till the last, few years really that people are talking about it as being religious trauma, spiritual abuse, whatever word, but it is the same as trauma. It has the effects, same manifestations as PTSD. And also shame and trauma. It's all intertwined. So a lot's happening in our body when we're, starting to do that deconstructing and healing and unraveling.
Yeah. And I know, Debbie, from other conversations and some email exchanges that we've had, that the developmental side of this, it sounds like that's where you find a lot of the complexity, in not just in the healing journey, but also in the journey towards understanding oneself and becoming aware of oneself. And I wonder if there's anything else, related to development and this phenomenon of religious trauma that you think would be useful and important for our listeners to hear.
Yeah, I would love to talk more about that, and also stop me if I'm getting too detailed, because this is just a piece I think I am so interested in and continue to learn more about, due to how unseen it's been, unspoken, but how detrimental it has been for almost all of us in being able to forge a competent, healthy adult life. There's a psychologist, Erik Erikson, who developed the psychosocial stages of development, I think like back in the 50s, I'm not sure exactly what year. He breaks it down to these different stages, different accomplishments, psychological and social accomplishments that we need to make. And he breaks it down to different ages and things we want to accomplish. Like at one stage, it's trust, autonomy, initiative, intimacy, ego, integrity. So it kind of breaks it down. So the titles aren't quite as important as the questions that go along with each stage that he developed, these existential questions. It's almost comical, and I know that none of this is funny, how they go exactly against what happens to us when we're raised in a high control group. So let's just, I have them right here. Let's just say one of the first existential questions in the first stage is, can I trust the world? Well, we know we're raised, no, you can't trust the world. Right. Those are worldly people that are not safe. The next stage is it okay to be me? No, it's not okay to be you. There's no individual, growing here. You got to be what everyone else wants you to be. There's nothing that's unique or special about you. Is it okay for me to do, move, and act? Well, only if it's under the constricted rules of what the religion's allowing you to do. It's very restrict. And these two also, can I make it in a world of people and things? Who am I and what can I be? So these are just going down. And when you just look at these really important ideas and developments about ourselves that are so impeded, especially the indoctrination from childhood and the toxic doctrines. So basically, we learn that we cannot trust ourselves. We have no sense of competency, no agency, no trust of others, no authenticity. And so you're going around the world. How do you go date? How do we go out and apply for jobs? How do we be in, social relationships when we haven't developed any of these really important core competencies of ourselves and then ourselves in the world? Those are like how we are as human. Let's just break it down. So those are the stages. And then we break it down into 4 different categories. And that's sexual, social, emotional, and intellectual. So, you and I, we could sit here and I know we could put a list together, right? So just think, intellectually, the impediment and the delay, we've had information withheld from us. Yeah. So we, have a limited amount of knowledge. You think about, I don't know about for how you were raised, but definitely for us, it was politics, culture, science, sex, all psychology. They were all, bad, need to be limited. Definitely repressed critical thinking, did not learn how to think for ourselves, no opinions, felt really behind intellectually, just really, really limited. And the other 3 areas, so the social, that we're really immature in relationships, not knowing how to set boundaries in relationships, feeling like a fraud, people not knowing, like I would have clients say, I don't even know how to date. I don't even know what to say or what to do. Or I'm going to go for this job interview. I have no idea, how to be, really being behind culturally, being out socially. And, I remember people talking about I was out for a long time, but it was back like in the early 80s and people were talking about politics. I had no idea. I was sitting there like pretending. I would do a lot of pretending, which never goes over well because it's obvious when you're acting like you know something that you don't. So luckily, I try not to do that much now because it's not a really authentic thing to do. But back then, when there was so much shame, I was always pretending that I fit in when I knew I didn't. And then we talked a little bit about emotionally how having these developmental stages really impeded. We're never allowed to have our own emotions, our own feelings are not okay. And if there was certain ones, you could be happy, don't be angry. There was just not a lot of personal experience with our emotions. And then of course, sexually, that one's probably, I think, one of the biggest, the most damaging and dangerous parts of the development that has caused so much harm. From probably all, whatever degree it is, but probably all the high control groups, cults, organizations, there is just this sexual message that, we as women are bad, our bodies are bad, or no healthy education. Like I have one client that was saying she's married now and she's really struggling sexually. She's like, there was no bridge for me to learn, like your body's bad, bad, bad. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. All of a sudden you're supposed to like really know what to do and connect with your body and be able to be, intimate with your husband. And for a lot of my clients, it brings up anxiety, stomach issues, pelvic pain, feelings of being, bad. To me, it's devastating and really sad because I see this, and I'm sure you probably do too, see this a lot. And such a beautiful part of being a human, turned into something, so damaged and so negative. And it's really hard for people to reclaim that. Possible, but hard. So those would be the 4 areas I would say in the psychosocial development and the stages, and then the consequences of being so thwarted in these stages and delayed.
Big thank you to Debbie Glander for that portion of our conversation. And actually, if you would like to hear the entire interview that Bonnie did with Debbie Glander, we're really wanting to boost up our email list here at Irenicast and let you know about things that are coming up, like intersections that Casey mentioned earlier in the conversation, and upcoming episodes. And we have a lot of ideas. We're not just back with regular episodes. We're back with renewed sense of purpose, I guess you could say. So we want to make sure that we're regularly keeping everyone updated on those things. So if you would like to sign up for email list, just go to our website, and then you'll be prompted to put in your email address, and then you'll get a download of the entire interview that Bonnie did with Debbie Glander, and it's really wonderful. So don't forget to sign up at our email list, and you can do that at irenicast.com. And if you would like to add your voice to this conversation, you can do that at irenicast.com/183. That's the show notes for this particular episode. And on those show notes, you'll find a complete list of all the other ways that you can like, follow, and contact the show. That's irenicast.com/183. On the other side of the music, it feels good to say that again. On the other side of the music. On the other side of the music, we are going to be playing one of our segments called This or That. All right, we are on the other side of the music, and we are going to be playing, I think this is new. Man, so many segments and games, but we're going to be playing This or That. And essentially, each host is going to present an eternal choice between two different things. One you keep, and the other gets snapped out of existence forever via your magical infinity stones. And that's kind of how we're going to play this game. So each of us will present it, and it could lead to overwhelming agreement, and we hold hands and say, yes, we are in agreement on what should leave, and it could lead to immense debate and argument. And it could rip the very fabric of Irenicast as we know it. So, we're putting the life of our show.
It's a good way to start. It's a good way to start that.
So, who would like to start? Who wants to present their eternal choice?
Okay, pizza or gravity?
And one we have to get rid of forever.
And one you have to get rid of forever.
So do we choose the thing we're getting rid of, or we're choosing the thing we want to keep?
You're choosing the thing that you would keep.
I'm gonna have to go with gravity. Have you ever seen those science experiments on what happens when something is in lack of gravity? It just blows up. Or is there an assumption that once gravity's gone, that our bodies will still be able to survive? Because basically, you're asking me to choose between death and pizza. It's still a hard choice, but I'm going to go with gravity. I'm going to keep gravity.
I feel like gravity is really overrated. As a bigger person, I would love the ability to just float around, So I'm choosing pizza personally.
Okay. I pick gravity too. I don't think you could eat pizza without gravity.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you got an opposable thumb.
Exactly.
You could hang on to that pizza.
Thank you, Rajeev.
I'm choosing pizza, man. I'm keeping pizza.
That's
I
right.
want to float around.
Exactly, Rajeev. Thank you. I knew you were the sensible one in the group here. Thank you.
We float around eating my pizza.
Right, and we're not eating none of that fake pizza either.
Let's
broccoli.
not do this. Let's not do this.
Broccoli bullshit.
That's right. That's heresy.
For those of you listening, I mean, it's appropriate as we talk about, deconstruction. If you're just listening for the first time, Rajeev and I have had and Casey as well, have had a long going argument about the validity of pizza toppings. And, as a progressive person who's open to ideas, I believe that it is important that you can put whatever you want on a pizza, because pizza is about the form and not the substance. Rajeev and Casey, however, they're fundamentalists. They believe that you should follow the rigid rules of what they deem is necessary to go on a pizza. And I apologize to everyone listening for that. And I apologize that has seeped into this wonderful, beautiful world that we have created in Irenicast. And, gentlemen, I still love you, but please keep your fundamentalism at home.
Well, Jeff, when you're wrong, you're wrong. So
I think it's interesting because I'm with Jeff on the pizza and the gravity thing. So I mean, maybe it's just a matter of difference between like science and religion.
Oh, there you go.
That
do you hear this, Rajeev? Do you hear this?
Yeah, the people that have these, like, they don't care about pizza, they would just get rid of pizza, which makes sense.
It's not about not caring about pizza.
If you really love pizza, you have some rules around
That's
pizza.
right.
Right. I heard that before.
The universe has some rules around being alive. So
I heard that before, Rajeev. I heard it before. If you really love Jesus, then here are the rules that you need to follow in order to not go to hell.
That is right.
Sounds exactly the same.
Right.
Narrow is the way for those who enjoy pizza.
This was a great choice, Casey. Very.
That was good. And you don't need either to live.
Kinda.
I'm
but
pretty sure
we
you
can
need gravity
have that conversation later. We could ask a physicist about that.
I'll bring my daughter in on the conversation.
Yeah,
she just read like 20 space books and from the library, and she has told me everything I need to know about stars and neutrons, something or other. She knows way more, and she talked about gravity and blowing up if you went into space. So,
but not only that, the planets need gravity in order to stay in their orbits. Like we would just be
flying off the Earth.
Not just flying off the Earth,
but at least we would have
flying
pizza.
out into like would be flying away from the sun. We'd have pizza. We'd have pizza for a minute.
It'd be dogs and cats living together. It'd be awful. All right. So we're split. Oh, Bonnie, we may have to.
Yeah, we're split.
I have to create a spinoff. No pun intended. All right. Rajeev, you have one for us?
Yeah, I do. Pineapple on pizza or poop on your shoes. Which are you getting rid of forever?
I'm getting rid of pineapple on pizza.
I can't even with this. I think it's obvious what my answer is going to be, but this is getting ridiculous that you're comparing shit to a wonderfully acceptable and delicious sweet ingredients that can complement any savory thing on your pizza. Have you ever had a barbecue chicken pizza with a little bit of pineapple to add that perfect sweetness? Like this is. Have you ever had grilled pineapple? Have you ever incorporated pineapple into your outdoor cooking? This
is where the theology comes into play, because pineapple on pizza is great. It's perfectly okay, because contextually our Hawaiian siblings are like, hey, we're going to put some pineapple on pizza and share it with the world. I'm like, that's great. Pineapple on pizza is okay with me. It's just like broccoli. So therefore, there's the choice. Which are you going to get rid of forever?
Broccoli or pineapple? Are you switching it on me?
No, I'm not switching it.
Okay, I'm getting rid of crap on the. We just recently got a dog, and I'm really bad with smells. My gag reflex is just really bad. So I've spent 2 hours researching online the best thing that I could do to pick up dog crap while I'm walking this dog and not be this, heaving person on the side of the road that's just like gagging with shirt over my mouth trying to pick this stuff up. And if we could get rid of defecation in general, I would be all for it. I would give up almost anything as a result of that. So that's my answer.
So Bonnie, you're the tiebreaker here.
Yeah, definitely. If it's between pineapple on pizza or poop on shoes has to go. You can pick the pineapple off the pizza if you really don't like it that much.
That is true. That is true.
Although I would, again, try it. It's
good.
It's good. It's good.
Right next to the corn and avocado. It's very good.
See, why?
There you go. There you go.
See, this is the problem with you people. This is the problem with you people.
How can you go to corn?
That's right. We give you pineapple, and now you want corn and avocado.
Yeah, what?
Roasted corn, avocado, red onion with some olives on with some white sauce. That's a good pizza right there.
First of all, how does red onion even come in the conversation? Onions are fine.
No, I'm saying that these are complement flavors. Like that, you put that together on a pizza, like that. It brings out the corn and the avocado.
I think the real disagreement here is what's an open-faced sandwich and what's a pizza.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the dilemma here.
That's essentially all a pizza is.
Oh God!
See, I don't even know what to do, man. Casey,
we need to move on.
Apparently, this segment is now the pizza debate part like 50, and we'll just like keep coming back to this over and over again. So Bonnie, save us with your next choice of this or that.
Okay, rivers or the ocean?
That's hard. I'm going to choose, so I really, really do love the ocean. So I'm going to say that I would be willing to sacrifice rivers so that I could enjoy the ocean. I love the expansion. I love being able to look at something so huge and just meditate on how small I am in the wake of it, literally. So yeah, I love the ocean.
Yeah, I'm with Casey. I could never sacrifice the ocean. I've spent the majority of my life on the coast, and I just love it. I love the sound of the waves. I love everything about the ocean. Although I have an appreciation for rivers, I can't hold a candle to the ocean, specifically the Pacific Ocean. I don't know about all those other oceans, but that's the one I know the most.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised at my answer here, but I would keep rivers. For I don't know, it's like a lot of reasons, and I love like tropical places. I'm from South India. We've got some great beaches and that part of the world and the island groups, but I don't know. Rivers are life. Fresh water is necessary, and oceans are fantastic, but magnificent waterfalls. Just even like seasonal streams over prairie grass. I don't know. There's just something magical about rivers.
Yeah, it's a super hard one for me. That's why I picked it. Because I identify with the river as like a part of my spiritual journey, like getting sort of caught in the flow. Mm-hmm. But the ocean is just such a powerful force. Like I think of love as an ocean. So it's really hard. It's a hard one to pick. I'm hoping that this is a contextualized choice. So like in this moment, I'm drawn to the ocean. So I would give up rivers, but I'm hoping I could revisit that.
It's actually great because now here's my opportunity to sell you all bottled water because y'all going to be dehydrating by the ocean. Be like, oh, fresh spring water.
Oh man,
too much.
What's wrong with capitalism?
What's that? Maybe that's another. That's
another episode.
Another this and
that.
Right. Speaking of capitalism, my choice are two things that I have longed for and missed over the last year and a half due to the current pandemic. So my this or that is movie theaters or live music concerts.
That's so hard.
What is wrong with everybody? Why is nobody picking like the easy one? I went with poop on shoes as an option.
I thought the point of this game was to like create some internal tension and doubt.
That's true. I'm used to being the outlier on these segments. That's a tough one, man. I'm going to answer though. I'm going to say I would keep the live music because I feel like you can somewhat, a movie experience. It's one-sided. There's stuff coming at you, and yeah, there's people in the theater, but you can kind of replicate that at home. Invite friends over. You could all even pitch in and get a big screen and some decent speakers. But live music, there's nothing like it.
I agree. I would pick. I love going to the movies. I think the hardest thing about that choice is not so much that, like a repetition of going to the movies, but it's that it's there. The theater is there. Like when you need an escape for a minute, you can like look on you can find out what's playing, what is playing, and you can have it on the calendar. Like you're going to be able to go to the movies. And removing that is really hard, but worth it if the choice is live music or concerts. I mean, there's live music and then there's concerts, and I think you said concerts.
Concerts,
Jeff, so, yeah, I would have to choose that.
Yeah, I would choose that as well, even though I'm a huge movie fan. But just the ability to be with people singing, I mean, it's not even really about the entertainment of the person as it is about the energy of the space that I really thrive in. So I would pick live music or concerts also.
Yeah, I meant live music, so it's like even, the local artist at the brew pub in the village,
Sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And the spectacles are great too. But
I thought you meant you were singing.
Oh God, no.
That's live music.
I'd pick the movies over my singing.
I will be the voice of dissension here, and I'd have to go with the movies. I don't think anyone's surprised by that, but it is closer than most people might expect it to be. But there's just something. I think I had to boil it down to the annoyances. Like when you go to a theater, there's some annoyances, but there are far more annoyances at certain live concerts, depending upon. And I'm never able to afford the really, really good seats anyway. So it's just, ways. And I'm rethinking that crowd of a space, at least in movie theater. I have a little bit more space now, being in a big crowd. It's not so appealing right now, but maybe I'll feel that way, 6 months after the pandemic is really over. We're not seeing all these things pop up. So, but the theater has been my sanctuary since I was a kid. So I got to go with the movies. All right. We did it. We did our first official episode back, and we're going to continue this conversation of beyond the binary of deconstruction and reconstruction. I'm really excited about our next week's conversation. It's going to be really interesting, and I think at least in the space, I think it's going to be a unique take on that next step in our, in the deconstruction journey. So, yeah, that'll do it for us this week. If you enjoy Renacast and you'd like to join the work that we are doing, please consider donating to our PayPal link at irenacast.com/PayPal. We're committed to keeping the show for free for listeners, but there are costs involved and your financial support helps. That's irenacast.com/PayPal. Irenacast is also a nonprofit organization, so your donations are tax deductible. For more information on other ways you can partner with the show, please go to irenacast.com/support. And some of the other ways include our Amazon affiliate link and, of course, our merch. You can also support by simply making sure that you've subscribed or are following the show on whatever platform you're listening on right now. And if the platform allows it, leave a rating and or review. We always love to hear from you. So for this week, I'm Jeff.
I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
This is Rajeev.
Thanks for joining the conversation.